Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Fly tipping is the phrase for today, and fly tipping is when you throw away your rubbish in a place which is illegal. So, here in the UK, we have very strict laws about how rubbish has to be disposed of. A fly tipper, as a noun, is someone who illegally dumps waste in unauthorized places instead of disposing it in a lawful place and in an environmentally friendly manner. Now, fly tipping can involve the dumping of just about anything: household, hazardous trash, waste, furniture, construction, other materials. Actually, it's very harmful and can pose public health risks. It can also pollute land and kill wildlife. Now, the thing about fly tippers is they don't care where they dump rubbish. And fly tipping itself is a really big concern. Generally speaking, here in the UK, it's looked after by our local government, not our central government. And that means, depending where you are in the UK, if you get caught fly tipping, you could face a number of different actions. And one of our local governments here has decided to increase penalties for fly tipping. They're actually increasing the amount you have to pay if you're caught from £400 to £1,000. And if you drop any litter on the ground, then you have to pay £250. And at the moment, that is £100. Oh, they're very serious about it. So you have to be very careful how you dispose of things. Now, here in the UK, generally speaking, if you call the local government and you say that you have something that needs to be removed, let's say you have a wardrobe or a sofa, you can call the government and you can say, I would like you to come and take this away. Depending where you are in the UK, they'll come and they will do it free. Now, where I live, they will do it free once. But the next time you ask, you have to pay. I think it's £25 or £50. If you put it on the streets, it's basically fly tipping. And if you take it to the local lake and leave it sitting there, that's also fly tipping. If you leave it in your garden, that's also fly tipping, especially if it rains and it gets wet. Although I don't think the government can do much about it if it's on your own property, but you still can get into serious trouble. You can still get into serious trouble about it. So that is fly tipping. Now, there's really no excuse for people to be fly tipping these days, because if you have anything that you don't want, you can call one of our second-hand shops or one of our local charities, and they will take it, they will restore it, and they can resell it to make some money for the charity. So you just call them and you say, would you like a sofa? Come and pick it up. And a few days later, they'll appear. Now, there's a few problems with this. First of all, There's a speed at which you might want it removed, because if there's a new sofa coming in, you want rid of the old sofa immediately. And the charity might say, okay, we'll come in 2 weeks. So to keep two sofas that you don't have room for 2 weeks might be a big problem. So some people think, I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to go and perhaps see if I can dump this somewhere. The other thing you can do is all of our local governments have very accessible rubbish dumps, which are authorized by the government. And when you go there, they will direct you to take your things, where to leave them. And that's okay. That's okay also. And those dumps are open, I think, most days of the week. So you arrive in your car and the woman will ask you, or the man will ask you, what do you have? What do you need to dump? And she'll tell you where to go, and there's no charge for that. That's completely free. So you see, there's plenty of options, but still there are people who, for whatever reason, don't want to do that. Don't want to do that. One reason might be that the items are damaged, maybe, and if the items are damaged, perhaps somebody thinks, well, the charity shop won't want them. The government will charge me £25 to remove this because I've had other things removed before, and I'll have to pay a truck to take it to the local rubbish dump authorized by the government. So why don't I just take an axe, smash it into little pieces, and dump it somewhere? That's the kind of mentality, and there's a lot of that happens. We live in a very disposable culture. So in a very disposable culture, you'll find that things often are left around the streets. I noticed outside my house a few days ago, my apartment, someone had just thrown, they just thrown down an old television. And I left it there for one day. And by the time I went to collect it the next day, to put it in the bin, because it was only a small TV, it had gone. So I'm guessing somebody else had moved it. Right now, outside my apartment block, someone's actually dumped a bin there. Crazy. Crazy to think that you'd actually dump a trash can, but this trash can is empty. And we have so many trash cans in our gardens, is probably one that's extra. I mean, I have a black trash can for normal waste, a green one for plastic wastes, and a blue one for paper, a brown one for garden rubbish. It's very confusing, and then the government sometimes change the colour. So there's kind of like a surplus of bins flying around. So you see, there's all kinds of things lying around. It really depends. It depends, of course, on your education level, because some people would prefer just to drop things and not worry about them. We have a phrase in the UK which is called NIMBY, which means not in my backyard. It's an acronym, and you hear it here a lot. Not in my backyard. Fly tipping, it's very serious and is dealt with on a local government level. And if you're caught fly tipping, you can be in serious trouble. There's CCTV cameras everywhere here, So it doesn't take them long to find out who actually did the fly tipping. But it really is an eyesore. An eyesore uh, is something which is very difficult to look at because it just looks horrible. So when people do fly tipping, it's an eyesore. Now, I live in the countryside, and there are people here who dump things at the side of the road. Now, you wouldn't think that would happen here in the UK, but it does, and it really looks awful. With local government cutbacks as well, the government isn't really taking care of cutting grass at the side of the roads or on main roads anymore. So that also is something which is not looking very, very nice these days. Anyway, if you do fly tip regularly, or if you dump half your house somewhere, you will go to jail for that. You won't just pay £1,000. They do take a lot of action against people who do things like that. I mean, back in the 1970s and 80s, I can remember fly tipping was perfectly acceptable. And I can remember certain places where people used to go just to dump things. And they would be dumped, and the moment you dumped them, people would appear from nowhere and rush to see what was dumped in case there was anything valuable there. Now, it's still a little bit like that in certain areas. I mean, even around the government's authorized rubbish dumps, there are people who are kind of there, and in the moment you dump something, they'll appear and they want to know what you've dumped. They'll go through it. So you have to be quite careful. You have to be quite careful. But giving things to a charity shop, if they can be reused, it gives a good feeling. It gives you a good feeling in your heart because you're helping somebody else. Now, I just want to say a few things about fly tipping. Okay, particularly this word fly. Now, I'm using this as an example, okay, because I've often told you that when you start to learn English, it's really important that you choose a place which you can call home, and from that place, learn English. Take the media from that place. Take the newspapers, for example, the TV channel, and from that place, read, listen. Do as much as you can from that one particular city or village. And I say that because if you start wandering around all of the UK or all of America, you're going to get a little bit discouraged. Let me give you this example, and you'll see what I mean. There's a phrase in the UK called on the fly. On the fly, which refers to doing something spontaneously without prior preparation. It's kind of about adjusting to situations as they arise, making decisions at that moment. For example, if a problem comes up, let's say that your central heating isn't working, so immediately you fix it on the fly. It means you do it immediately. You do it immediately. But in the northern part of the UK, in Scotland, for example, on the fly has a completely different meaning. On the fly in Scotland means when you do something secretly. When you do something secretly. For example, fly tipping, dumping rubbish. You do that on the fly, where nobody can see you do it. You might even say, oh, I'm going to pop out of the office and go for a fly smoke before the boss sees me going out. So you see, it has a very different meaning. And we find that across all of the English world. And that's why you can't just float from American English to British English to Irish English to Australian English. There needs to be some anchor, some grounding. So it's really important that you start your English from a place that's, well, familiar to you or has meaning for you. And from that place, you then begin. And from that place, you can recognize other similar idioms around the country. For example, if I'm watching an American reality TV show and I hear them using the phrase back up, I know that in American English that simply means to reverse your car. Please back up your car. But in British English, it means making sure your computer keeps all of its knowledge. Making sure your computer keeps all of its knowledge, to back it up. But I don't say to myself, oh well, which is right, American English or British English? I just say to myself, well, as a British man, I know the meaning. Americans have a different meaning, and that's okay for them. And this is where you need to get to. You need to know what's okay for you. And the place that you've learned English, that will be your starting point. And you can judge other forms of English to your own. If you're wise enough to wander around and just absorb everything, that's very good too. That's very good too. But if you try to say, for example, to someone in the UK, can you back up your car? They'll probably look at you twice because they'll think, do you mean reverse it? So I think you get my point that at an intermediate level, you need to begin saying, where's home? That's not an easy thing. That's not an easy question because it's all about identity. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say today. So today's phrase was fly tipping, and the person who does that is a fly tipper. And the verb, of course, is to fly tip. Okay? So just keep that in mind. On the fly in England, to do something spontaneously. The north of the UK is to do something secretly. That shows how broad our language is. And that's why you need to have a place that you call your own, and from that place you learn. If you think English people are experts in how language is spoken around the world, you'll be mistaken. If you use an idiom in the south that comes from the north, they look at you and they'll say, what? So you see, we don't all live in one place with the same understanding of language. We just learn from the culture around us. So that's the question today. Where do you belong? Where do you belong? That's it from me. See you all soon. Bye.